session of the Portland City Council on Wednesday, October 17th. Carla, please call the roll.
Udaly,
Here.
Fritz.
Here.
Fish,
Here.
Saltzman,
Here.
Wheeler.
Aye. I mean here. I already took my vote. Now you all know. Dang it, there goes the suspense.
I didn't know you were going to vote on this.
Good afternoon, Robert. How are you doing?
Very good. Welcome to the Portland City Council. The City Council represents all Portlanders and meets to do the city's business. The presiding officer preserves order and decorum during City Council meetings so everyone can feel welcome, comfortable, respected, and safe. To participate in council meetings, you may sign up in advance with the council clerk's office for communications to briefly speak about any subject. You may also sign up for public testimony on resolutions or the first readings of ordinances. Your testimony should address the matter being considered at the time. When testifying, please state your name for the record. Your address is not necessary. Please disclose if you are a lobbyist. If you are representing an organization, please identify it. The presiding officer determines the length of testimony. Individuals generally have 3 minutes to testify unless otherwise stated. When you have 30 seconds left, a yellow light goes on. When your time is done, a red light goes on. If you are in the audience and would like to show your support for something that is said, please feel free to do a thumbs up. If you want to express that you do not support something, please feel free to do a thumbs down. Disruptive conduct, such as shouting or interrupting testimony or council deliberations, will not be allowed. If there are disruptions, a warning will be given that further disruption may result in the person being ejected for the remainder of the meeting. After being ejected, a person who fails to leave the meeting is subject to arrest for trespass. Thank you for helping your fellow Portlanders feel welcome, comfortable, respected, and safe.
Thanks, Robert. Carla, could you please read the first item?
Item 1090, accept the Portland Design Commission 2017 State of the City Design Report.
Colleagues, the first item of business today is to thank the dedicated volunteers who serve on the commission. A number of them are here today. This commission has met 3, sometimes 4 times a month in 2017 and the first 3 quarters of 2018, and often for many hours at a time. They review land use cases and they provide design advice. They are a very dedicated and hardworking group of people. It includes Julie Livingston, the chair, who you'll hear from shortly, Jessica Molinar, vice chair, Tad Savinar, Zeri Santner, Don Vallister, Andrew Clark, and Sam Rodriguez. Could you all please stand up so that the council can recognize you, and we'll suspend the rules for a moment. Thank you. Thank you for your leadership. I'd also like to specifically recognize Commissioner Tad Savinar, who just completed his service with the Design Commissioner on September 30th, 2018. Thank you. Tad began his Design Commission career back in December of 2012. He sat in over 170 Thursday evening Design Commission hearings and countless other steering committee and advisor roles as a Design Commission liaison, for which he was paid nothing. The volunteer time commitment expended towards making Portland better by design is nothing short of admirable and deserves this kind of public recognition. Thank you very much to Tad for your dedication and service to this very important volunteer board over a period of many, many years. Now, this commission will be presenting their 6th report before the council, but they've been operating in the city of Portland since about 1980, providing leadership and expertise on urban design and architecture and on maintaining and enhancing Portland's historical and architectural heritage. This report comes to council at a very important time for the city and its expanding design overlay districts, as development and construction, as we all know, is unprecedented right now in terms of the overall history of the design review. These neighborhoods deserve the appropriate protection and predictability of quality infill that meets our density goals and inevitable growth. I look forward, as I'm sure all of you do, on hearing more today from the commission members and interested public and those who are committed to supporting the commission in all of its efforts. Commission Chair Julie Livingston is here to start us off. Thank you for being here. Thanks for your great work.
So thank you very much. It is a pleasure to be here today. We have what I think is a very interesting presentation for you. You have already received hard copy of the presentation, and in fact, the hard copy that was distributed in advance has more information than we will present in the PowerPoint today. If you have the ability to view the slides that I am looking at, you see a photo of our current design review staff and commission. This was taken just a couple of months ago, and at the time, Tad Savinar was still vice chair. Our agenda today is to discuss the purpose of design review, share some DOZA administrative improvements, look at some caseload data, and that caseload data spans 2017 and many months in 2018 as well. An overview of projects from 2017-2018, and then the 2017 Design Excellence Award. And finally, some testimony. We have 5 people here to testify today. And because there is a lot to pack in, I'm going to stick to script. And if you have questions, please interrupt me and ask the questions. But for the most part, I'm going to do my best to move through my presentation fairly quickly. You may have questions about some of the statistics or maybe about DOZA, so please do interrupt me.
Could you just tell people watching at home what DOZA is?
DOZA is the Design Overlay Zoning Assessment and now Zoning Amendment Report that has been here in Council Chamber a couple of times. And we will talk today about the administrative improvements, which are the responsibility of the Bureau of Development Services. It's how it plays out, how DOZA is playing out in our hearings room. So, beginning with the purpose of design review, the DOZA consultant, Mark Hinshaw of Walker Macy, recommended Design Commission adopt a charter and clarify its scope. And as part of that work, we also reworked the purpose statement that's included in Title 33, and that is what you are looking at here on the screen. Doing this work early in the DOZA implementation process has given BDS, the Design Commission, BPS, and the Planning and Sustainability Commission a strong foundation for DOZA legislative work. The refreshed language also addresses one of Mark Hinshaw's priority recommendations, using the 3 tenets of design to simplify, consolidate, and revise standards and guidelines. The purpose statement is built around the 3 tenets: context, public realm, and quality, and work done to date on standards reflects this organization. So the design excellence, context, public realm, and then quality and permanence terms that are highlighted in this slide are really where we are focusing our attention for statements and in the future for guidelines as well. And this is how we organize conversation in the hearings room. So a checklist of a summary of administrative improvements that were recommended through the DOZA process that have been made to date by the Bureau of Development Services. The hard copy includes actually the DOZA work plan, which is a much longer list than you see here. So BDS and the Commission have done as much as possible to implement DOZA and have been very focused on hearings room efficiencies, timeliness improvements, and predictability in all aspects of the process. These are issues that are very important to applicants. And we are finding that early design advice requests are proving to be critical to streamlining our process. Early advice gives applicants greater confidence as they move through the design process and allows them to integrate feedback from the Commission at an appropriate time in their design process. And highlighted in blue here, you can see our Twitter handle. We are at Portland DC Chair.
Could I ask you a question about that slide,
Please do.
So I was reading through endorsements in one of our more prominent local newspapers today. I was reading endorsements surrounding the housing bond that's on the November ballot. And a comment that was made by one of the newspapers was that we have been slow to actually change the design review process to be more responsive to the demand for housing, in particular in our community, and the speed with which, the urgency with which the community needs to approach this issue. Yet you have a long list of things that you have done here. Is there a way that we could better communicate all of this good work that you have done to the local media to let them know that, in fact, concrete steps have been taken? And how could we help you with that?
Thank you for offering to help. I think that we would be very glad to do that. We often have media in the hearings room. It is largely focused on large, high-profile cases, and most housing developments are not large, high-profile cases. So there is not a lot of opportunity for conversation with media around housing when it flows through the hearings room. But we would be glad to put together some suggestions on how we might do that.
Thank you.
Yeah, yeah, and I think it's very important. So this slide is, well, fairly self-explanatory. It's the annual increase from 2010 to 2017 in the number of cases we're seeing in the hearings room. There were a total of 7 cases in 2010, and in 2017, that was up to 37. So this is just type 3 approvals, and the workload continues to increase in 2018. So we thought that a side-by-side data slice through 2017 and 2016, the 2 most recent years, would be fairly informative. There's been a 460% increase from 2016 to 2017 in design advice requests and type 3 approvals, and 143% increase in type 2 approvals. So it's not just that commission's workload is expanding, staff's workload is expanding as well. In 2017, the type 3 appeals to council represented 7.8% of our caseload, and type 2 appeals to commission represented 2.8% of our caseload. And I've got a little bit more data on appeals later in the presentation. So this slide looks at hearings efficiency. The green bars are the overall number of type 3 approvals, and the blue bars are the number of one hearing approvals. And again, this is from 2010 to 2017. So in 2017, you can see that we have really been able to increase the percentage of cases that move through in a single hearing. And this is due in large part to the design advice request and the effectivity of the design advice requests. Mark Hinshaw, the DOZA consultant, said repeatedly that an attitude of collaboration is important in having successful design outcomes. And this idea plays out very clearly in the hearings room when all parties, the commission, staff, and applicants come to the table. An applicant can move through the process in less time overall and with fewer and shorter hearings. Sometimes it takes more than one hearing to get to yes, and this is usually attributable either to the complexities of a case or sometimes a lack of responsiveness on the part of an applicant. So looking at the central city, I find this fascinating. The number and location of buildings approved through the type 3 process in 2016 and 2017 by neighborhood. So this is 2017, and there's 2016, 42 new buildings over both of those years. All of our central city neighborhoods are gaining a significant number of new large buildings that will impact and change neighborhood character, and the Design Commission has to be able to understand and interpret many different contexts. We also have to be able to consider present and future contexts. So there is a lot at play in Portland's central city. Here is a little bit more on the type 3 appeals that have been made to council. Generally, what we are looking for is that a proposal meet approval criteria on balance. We are always working hard to get to yes. There has been one denial since 2010. It was the Ankeny Apartments. There have been, I think, 3 cases where conditions of approval have been appealed by an applicant. One is the Next Hotel, Central East Side, the Studio and Guild Theater building window replacement and renovation work next to Director Park, and the Vibrant Apartments Affordable Housing in the North Pearl. And then there have been a few approvals that have been appealed by the neighborhood. The Press Blocks Tower in Goose Hollow, the Fremont Apartments in North Pearl, and Block 290 Apartments in Northwest Portland. The one denial from Commission's perspective was a case of not all parties bringing the attitude of collaboration that Mark Hinshaw noted to the process. We don't want council to be the design commission, but there are really 2 issues at play here. Appeals are commensurate with our workload. When we hear more cases, there is more risk of appeal. And then the second is that DOZA improvements include greater public outreach. And so there is more public participation in our process. And it's not unreasonable to assume that moving forward, there may be more appeals because there is more public participation in the process. So given how much time we all spend thinking about Portland's housing crisis, we decided to take a look at how housing has been playing out in the hearings room over the course of the past couple of years. This slide looks at Type 2 and Type 3 housing approvals between 2010 and 2017. And again, Type 2 is a staff level review, and Type 3 is the Design Commission. The blue bars, the top of each bar that's blue, that's housing. And the green bar is all other cases. So we have all heard about the significant increase in housing proposals prior to inclusionary housing going into effect on February 1st, 2017. And you can see the blue bar of 2017 is significantly larger than the blue bar of past years. So it's true that a record number of housing units flowed through our process in 2017. And it's important to note that not all of these approved housing projects are permitted and out of the ground yet. So this is a snapshot of housing cases only, and this time it's by the quarter. Since the last quarter of 2016, that's about the time the rush to beat inclusionary housing began. And again, this is Type 2 and Type 3 approvals. The green bars are Type 3 and the blue bar, sorry, that's backwards. The green bars are Type 2 and the blue bars are Type 3. The second quarter of 2018, you can see, is a significant uptick in housing applications. This slide shows how many of the pre-inclusionary housing vested units aren't yet out of the ground. So Type 2 on the left, Type 3 on the right. Some of these projects are in permitting. Given nervousness around current market conditions, a few of them are up for sale. Not all of these will move forward, but for all intents and purposes, there are about 4,800 housing units in the Type 3 pipeline alone. So this is our last slide before we move to the overview of projects, and it's a look at housing proposals that have moved through the design review process since February 1st, 2017, projects that aren't vested and have an obligation to provide affordable housing units. The Type 2 bar on the left is a standalone, but the pre-app conference, design advice request, and Type 3 bars are cumulative. So there are currently about 3,000 housing units in the queue, in the Type 3 queue. So here we're going to move into the overview of projects from 2017, 2018. Here is the real reason the City of Portland values the design review process. We are going to share the images of 15 buildings that we believe really raise the bar on design excellence. There have been many more than 15 since the start of 2017, but these 15 really exemplify creativity, innovation, and a strong response to context. This is a building by GBD Architects. It was designed as part of a modification approval for the Broadway Tower, which sits right behind. That's the large building that's just completed construction that you see in this image. But the small building in the foreground is a small housing building that GBD designed. Their offer was, in order to increase the development capacity for Broadway Tower, was to put affordable housing units in this new housing building on the South Park blocks. It is our belief that this really does a great job with A8, contribute to a vibrant streetscape, and B5, make plazas, parks, and open spaces successful. The Fleidner Building, built in 1905. This was by Jones Architecture. It is a renovation and a little bit of a restoration of this building. It is a quarter block building in the West End and is really a significant contributor to the character of this neighborhood. It does a fantastic job with guideline A6, reuse, rehabilitate, and restore buildings, and C3, respect architectural integrity. So on the PSU campus, Hacker has undertaken a renovation of Neuberger Hall. This is a fantastic example of B1, reinforce and enhance the pedestrian system, and C8, differentiate the sidewalk level of buildings. You can see an image in the upper left of what the building currently looks like, and then the larger image is what the building will look like when construction is complete. Now it really doesn't have a ground floor. There are no windows, there's no kind of interaction with the public realm, and so PSU and Hacker are doing a really nice job of making this building be the building that it always wanted to be.
Julie, can we go back to that for a second?
Yeah.
So that's the new Jordan Schnitzer art gallery, right?
Yes, it is.
Okay.
The thing you're not seeing here is the park facade, because this building, sits right next to the park blocks as well, so it also does a really great job of addressing the South Park blocks. 1010 Northeast Grand, this is 240 units of affordable housing that I'm very close to. C2, promote permanence and quality in design, and C4, complement the context of existing buildings. The building that is under construction right now is the mid-rise in the middle ground, the kind of shiny building.
Can I just put a little plug in for this building?
Please do.
Because I'm old enough to remember when we created the Portland Housing Bureau, then Mayor Sam Adams agreed that we would transfer most if not all the properties currently held by PDC over to the Portland Housing Bureau. The Portland Housing Bureau had a completely different mission statement than PDC in terms of developing properties. This was originally designed by the Weston folks to be either a luxury hotel or luxury condos, and it was going to be a tall, narrow structure, a kind of a Vancouver Point Tower at one point. When it came to the Housing Bureau, it was subject to the guidelines of the Housing Bureau, which was affordable housing. So this is a conspicuous win for the community because this could have been just high-end condos, and that's what PDC was working with the developer on. And when the transition occurred, we got a chance to pick up affordable housing in a very high opportunity area and a very desirable location.
We are just beginning to install windows at the lower floors. So another Lloyd District project, this one by Works Progress Architecture. This is modular. As far as I know, this isn't moving forward right now. This is one of the projects that has been shelved, but there may be a lot of this in Portland in the future. These are stacked modular units. This does a very nice job with A5, enhance, embellish, and identify areas. This is the very north end of Lloyd. And B4 provides stopping and viewing places. There's a really great pedestrian alley that was developed on the south side of this building.
What do you mean by modular? Are they just Lego blocks?
Every one of those boxes is a housing unit that arrives fully assembled, and then they are stacked together on site and attached.
They're going to stay up in the earthquake? They're going to stay up in the earthquake?
Yeah, that is one of the strengths of this system. Yeah, they are seismically, they are great performers.
Thank you.
Also in Lloyd is the Lloyd Center. The group that owns and is working on redeveloping the Lloyd Center kind of piece by piece is doing a very good job of updating this building and making it be responsive to public realm guidelines, especially C8, differentiate the sidewalk level of buildings. And then here, of course, C13, integrate signs. So the Burnside Bridgehead in the central east side is undergoing a lot of change. You see here not only the yard, but another building that is currently under construction at the old Fischel's site. A1, integrate the river, done very nicely with this building, and C11, integrate roofs and use rooftops. You can see some green space at an intermediate level there that makes really nice outdoor space immediately adjacent to Burnside and across the street from the yard. And in Goose Hollow, Providence Park came in for a design advice request with a really nice strategy that responds so well to Portland architect A.E. Doyle's original design for the stadium. A2, emphasize Portland themes, and C10, integrate encroachments, are done really well here. Also in Goose Hollow, the press blocks, the Oregonian buildings are being redeveloped. This tower, as well as the small building immediately to the left of it, and then a building that is almost off-screen to the left. Those three buildings constitute the Press Blocks development. B4 provides stopping and viewing places. There's a very nice plaza. And C5, Design for Coherency. Bert Gregory from Methuen is here to provide some testimony today. This is Bert's work, and Design Commission is always thrilled to see Bert work in Portland because his work is so incredibly clear and coherent. In the River District, a small project by TVA Architects. This is not in the historic district, and yet the architect did a really great job of developing a loading dock that is along 13th and elevated the outdoor space adjacent to the 13th Avenue Historic District. Just a really nice gesture on the part of a very small building. C4, complement the context of existing buildings, and C7, design corners that build active intersections. Also in the River District, we are seeing an immense amount of self-storage in the central city. It's everywhere, but it is definitely landed in the central city, and that is in large part because so many of the housing units that we've built over the past several years are so incredibly small, and people need a place to put their stuff. So there will be a new self-storage building built at the north end of the Pearl District. This one, by comparison to a lot of what's built around the city, is really pretty nice. They did some active space at the ground floor and did some nice facade manipulation. There is a little bit of glass in this facade. It's not just blank wall. So B1, reinforce and enhance the pedestrian system. And B3, bridge pedestrian obstacles. There were some street connectivity issues at the north end of the neighborhood here that this project is doing much to address. And then in Gateway, responding to the Gateway Regional Center guidelines rather than Central City fundamentals, a nice little townhouse development by Ankrum Moyson Architects. A1, strengthen relationships between buildings and the street. And C5, transition to adjacent neighborhoods. This is a really nicely scaled residential development. And up at OHSU, the Markham Hill Design Guidelines. NBBJ is doing a really nice building, the Elks Children's Eye Clinic. The Markham Hill Design Guidelines are structured a little bit differently than others, but Guideline 1, enhance views of Markham Hill, and Guideline 4, develop successful formal open areas. And finally, this was an appeal. This was a Type 2 case that came to commission on appeal. It's in the St. John's neighborhood. It was designed by Jones Architecture, the same folks that did the Fleidner building. This is a really nice, small residential project that commission felt is a great fit for the St. John's neighborhood. P1, enhance the sense of place and identity by incorporating site and building design features that respond to the area's desired characteristics and traditions. This is a CLT building, by the way. And E4, create intersections that are active, unified, and have a clear identity through careful scaling of detail and location of buildings, outdoor areas, and entrances. This is immediately adjacent to a small plaza that the city of Portland owns that really does need some attention. But this is a nicely scaled small building in a neighborhood that will likely continue to experience growth. And this was the community design guidelines.
And what was the subject of the appeal?
The neighborhood appealed it. They felt that it did not fit into St. John's. It lacks the storefront character of the smaller 1- and 2-story buildings in the neighborhood. The guidelines themselves are pretty broad. They allow architects and designers to interpret the existing context fairly broadly. And so Commission felt that this was a really nice modern expression of those guidelines. And now our 2017 Design Excellence Award, which is in the Central East Side and is awarded to Hacker Architects for District Office. It is under construction right now. When you travel down Grand Avenue, you probably see this coming out of the ground. I surveyed staff and other commissioners a couple of months ago to find out, what really was the best project that rolled through the hearings room in 2017, and it was unanimous. This building knocks every guideline out of the park, especially A5, enhance, embellish, and identify areas. The scale of this, the scale of the openings, its responsiveness to the context of the Central East Side, all really well done. A8, contribute to a vibrant streetscape. There is a beautiful ground floor of retail space that is just so consistent with the architecture of the floors above. The coherency of this building, C5, is really something we don't see very often in the hearings room. And then also C2, promote quality and permanence in design. The materials of this building, it's a CLT structure and it's clad with a really creative mortar-washed white brick. There are large operable windows at the upper stories. And then the storefront at the ground floor, everything just works together beautifully. So this was the unanimous selection of staff and the commission.
Is this a beam development project?
I believe it is. And Corey Martin from Hacker is going to be one of the testifiers today, and he will confirm that for you. Urban Development Partners. Urban Development Partners. Okay. So testimony today, first up is Corey Martin from Hacker, and then Anile Halava from Project, Bert Gregory from Methuen, Tom DeChiara from Cairn Pacific, and Dave Audie from the AIA Urban Design Panel. So Corey, if you'd like to come up.
While they're coming up, could I ask you a question? So there's broad agreement that an active first floor, ground floor is very, very important, and that usually means retail. What do we know about the dynamic of retail in the community and the projected demand for retail in the community?
This is a conversation we have every time there is a project proposed in South Waterfront. Because South Waterfront hasn't gotten there yet. And so the real goal is flexible spaces that can be programmed as active use rather than single-purpose spaces, because they just don't provide the flexibility that we want over time.
So in the near term, what kind of options do you have other than pure retail?
We've been seeing, especially in South Waterfront, we've been seeing a lot of work-live spaces. And in fact, Bert Gregory, the projects that Methuen does often at the ground floor have work-live spaces, so they can be used as office, retail, or residential. It's a matter of, kind of the proportions of the space.
Thank you. Welcome.
Thank you. Hello, everyone. My name is Corey Martin. I'm a design principal at Hacker Architects, part owner of Hacker Architects as well. I joined the firm in 2011. And so before that, I founded Path Architecture with my former partner, Benjamin Kaiser, who also served on the design commission at some point. So I've led projects through the design review process for my entire career, beginning with staff reviews early on in North and Northeast Portland, and then including projects built in historic conservation districts, which are really important, and then more recently with reviews by the Design Commission in Northwest Portland and Southeast Portland. And as I was thinking about this testimony, I realized that possibly coincidentally, both my current business partner, David Keltner, and my former partner, Benjamin Kaiser, have both served as design commissioners. So,
You were destined.
yeah. So, interestingly, that's allowed me to experience being on both sides of the table. So I've seen those guys go through the process of helping others navigate the design review process, and I've also navigated the design review process myself with my own projects. So an interesting point of view that I've earned through that process. So my personal goal is to design extremely humane spaces that support true well-being and connect people to our amazing landscape in the Pacific Northwest while also protecting it. And so building on that, our firm's goals really are aligned, but kind of expanding that into taking a really long view when we're designing. We want to design new buildings that contribute to our city in the long term, because all of us, will be gone long before these buildings are gone. And so that we take that very seriously, and we're kind of known for acting with a lot of restraint during the design review process relative to a lot of firms in town. So above all, we want to participate in the continued success and creation of this great city and create meaningful connections between people and nature through architecture. And so for us, the quality of design in Portland is higher than in other cities that we've visited. So, personally, when I see what's happening in other places, I'm really thankful that Portland has such a high standard for design. You know, when I go to places like Austin or Seattle, they just don't have quite the lasting design strength that our buildings do, and they're built with many of the same components at the same cost. So it's interesting to see that happen, you know. Somehow, they're not getting to the same level of design as Portland. And so the average level of design here is incredible. We're a design city, and we're known as a design city. The bar is very high, and so again, as a designer, this standard makes my work pretty challenging, but that's okay. The high standard helps me develop mastery of my craft, and so we've won a lot of design awards, both here and beyond, but I have to say that honestly, when we win an award in Portland, it feels really good. It feels like almost better than winning a national design award. We also work in other markets extensively, and so when we bring our Portland design process to other places, we're pretty much good to go. So our clients are impressed. They appreciate that our process helps them realize their projects more efficiently, more cost-effectively, frankly, and it stems from the ways that we help them navigate through the approval processes in their communities based on our experience here, and then how our process helps them make critical design decisions early in the process, which again, design review forces us to do. And so much of why this is the case is because we have a healthy design review process in Portland, and I think the design review process makes our entire city stronger as well. It helps to elevate Portland's brand. It helps keep our economy strong by drawing people and businesses that value design to our city. All of this is about the larger impact that the design process and the design review process has on our city. Specifically, though, for myself and our firm, the design review process provides a framework that makes the design of our projects more efficient, more impactful, and cost-effective. So I know that a lot of firms, or maybe it's just a few, they've been resistant to the process, and that the amount of oversight can seem daunting to people. But having been through the process many times and having seen the direct impact on the projects through the eyes of my partners who have served on design commission, I think it's worth it. It's really important. It's part of why those firms and companies were attracted to Portland in the first place. I'd argue that rather than making the design and entitlement process more difficult, it makes it more efficient. Design review is just one part of the process. So it helps what can be a complex process seem more efficient and more kind of driven by logic and kind of looking to the big picture. So the design review process, all the way from the DAR, which is optional, as you know, through the final approval, provides a really clear structure that helps us and helps our clients make their projects successful. The design review process helps us to make hard decisions earlier in that process, and it helps us strip away the less important goals and ideas and focus on key issues. It helps guide us towards ideas that will last. It helps us strip away our egos and think about the community that the project serves, because again, after all, we're gonna be gone long before these buildings are gone. So thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Okay, and Anile is next.
There we go. Okay. My name is Anile Halova, and I'm a real estate developer here in Portland, Oregon. Our company is called Project, and there are 3 partners, including myself. Today, I'm testifying on behalf of myself and not any of the boards that I'm on, including the Land Conservation and Development Commission. So Project is a values-based developer that focuses on sustainability, well-designed projects, and we build with quality and placemaking as our foundation. In our 9 years of existence as a company, we have permitted 12 buildings in the city of Portland and 6 of buildings in other cities in Oregon. For the Portland project, 6 have gone through either a Type 2 or Type 3 review. I'm here to testify in support of design review and the work the city staff and the design commission have made to develop a process with solutions that are beneficial for the city of Portland and its inhabitants. As background and for full disclosure, developers, including myself, do not like discretionary processes. So if you go to any developer at any given day and ask if they will voluntarily sign up for design review, they will always say no. But that is not because design review is not good for the city and leads to good outcomes, or because the system is broken. That is because a process, any process or extra layer in permitting adds an element of the unknown, which is risky for schedule and budget. However, I think the question at hand that you may be presented is, one, is the design review good for the city and its citizens? And two, is it too onerous of a process so that it impedes development or adds exorbitant cost? The answers would be yes, it is good for the city as demonstrated in the staff presentation, and no, at this time, design review does not impede development. It also does not add exorbitant cost as long as the developments are done right. In other words, the system is not broken. What few people understand is that developers, we behave as a cohort in many ways, learning from each other's worst and best practices and even copying each other. If a developer or an architect sees a project that goes through design review quickly, they take note about what is done well and what could be improved in their own application to make their process go faster. We, and hopefully others, have learned that the key for passing through design review the quickest is first hiring a good architect. Second, guiding the team to focus on placemaking and improving the public realm. Third, getting early assistance and feedback from the city staff. And finally, working in good faith through the pre-development phase to keep the approved design intent intact. Given this, the majority of developers doing good work are getting through design review well and quickly with little damage to their budgets. It has become a predictable and understandable process. However, there are some developers and architects that have become dismissive about the process and thus find themselves in a process where the design is brought to the commission prematurely with less thought into how these significant buildings are contributing to the benefit of our citizens. These developers are now learning through the process how to improve design, and the city is better as a result of this. Given the importance of good design in our city and also the strong desire for processes to be clear and objective, I believe it is very important to keep highly qualified design commissioners on the commission, people that believe in good design and are experts in the discipline. This is critical as it allows for a more consistent and well-directed process and greater predictability for developers and design professionals as they navigate the process. It also ensures that commissioners don't nitpick on things that are a matter of taste. In the future, there is a potential opportunity that a system such as design review won't work anymore. This is not the case with design review right now, which has been getting better over time. As with any processes, there is always room for improvement. If I had a chance to make improvements, I would ask the city staff be given more discretion to approve changes made by the design team after the design review application has been approved. The reason? To account for things that are not yet known about the project at the beginning when they submitted for design review. Design review happens early on in the project when the constructability and viability of a project are not yet solidified. For example, the cost and availability of materials change very often during pre-construction. Additionally, the constructability of the original design may not prove feasible, cost-effective, or aesthetically pleasing when the design details are worked out. With the ethos that more density is good for our city, infill and growing up rather than out is right for a sustainable future. Providing housing of all types is needed in our city, and that city processes should not add unnecessary cost to a project. I believe the city staff can be given more flexibility after design review approvals to allow for the natural changes in design. And the ability to enforce the rules and stop developers or architects that do not build what they say they're going to build, and not to punish the rest of us for doing good work. This will lead to a process that is more flexible, allow projects to go more seamlessly through the approval and construction process, and will continue to be highly regarded by the city. Thank you for giving me time today to speak in support of the design review process and the Design Commission.
So what did you mean when you said that in the future, design review may not be necessary?
Oh, I didn't say necessary.
okay.
I said
Something.
basically there could be a moment at which it's broken if it's not, continually improved, or if commissioners are not qualified to give good design advice. I think then it could be relooked at. But at this time, with the expertise on the Design Commission and also the approvals in process, it's definitely really good for our city.
Okay, thanks.
Okay, next up are Bert Gregory and Tom DiChiara.
Welcome, thank you.
Thank you. My name is Bert Gregory, a design partner at Methuen with offices in Seattle, San Francisco, and Los Angeles. I was the lead architect for Heartline in the Pearl at 13th and Johnson, and currently designing the Press Blocks residential tower in Goose Hollow and the Pepsi blocks on Sandy Boulevard. I'd like to commend the mayor, city council, design commission, and city staff for whether I consider the best city in the country for its fostering of a quality urban experience, equitable development, and great design. It's my favorite place in the country to work, with its great zoning code, its high expectations for design, and excellent design commission process. You are responsible to design a city for the next 100 years, and it is commendable to review and update the land use review process on a regular basis. Portland's current design review process works extremely well, and modest improvements are always helpful, but compared with my experience outside of Portland, the review process and commission sets the bar for other cities to follow. It is interactive, collaborative, efficient, and consistent for those applicants that are well prepared and seek excellence. The high caliber of the design commissioners, very experienced in design and development, makes projects a better fit in the community and exceeding design expectations. Design advice requests are a critical advisory tool that allows for a collaborative exchange of ideas with the design commission, neighborhood citizens, the designer, and developer applicant. I believe that community outreach, then a three-step commission review is important for success. At the conceptual phase, review of the massing and approach. At the second DAR, schematic level, ground floor, fenestration, and materials. And then design development at the land use review level to review details and implementation of the commission's advice. Be cautious about reducing DARs and not having the commission's eyes on the details, as these are successful aspects of Portland's process and is what helps make a great city. The Design Commission and the collaborative BDS staff are not slowing things down. A high caliber design and development team to start the process is critical to a cost-effective, speedy, and successful collaborative process in any jurisdiction. Portland's design review doesn't cost more money. In fact, it's less risky and less expensive than in many jurisdictions, if you are well prepared and do the proper due diligence. In all cities, there's areas to help speed. Interdepartmental coordination sometimes can be an issue in any city, and sometimes in Portland that's true too. We would suggest some improvements to formally tie and integrate the land use process with the public works permit process, with a timeline for each for completion. We would suggest perhaps a senior level PBOT decision maker attend and be part of the DAR and LUR Design Commission meeting process. Consider a PBOT Design Commission staff being located as part of BDS. Also consider having BDS staff represented at Public Works permit reviews to also speak of the design standards and commission goals. Increasing staff, if needed, to increase processing speed would be beneficial. Review and consider if it's possible to reduce the BDS completeness check from 21 to 7 days and move from a 51-day wait period to 30 days. Those might be actions that would help the staff and the team. The State of the City Design Report had some great suggestions. Some thoughts and comments. Make sure the commission evaluation checklist is the right checklist and supporting the goals for a beautiful city seeking design excellence. Set DIR at 1/2 block and above, not a 1/2 block and below. Having a city center design commission and a neighborhood commission should be explored. That might be beneficial to not have the commissioners there 4 weeks a month. The suggestion that the community design standards and neighborhood-specific design guidelines need updating and coordination is a very good suggestion. Updating these fine documents while reinforcing Portland's excellent DAR and LUR process is a great opportunity to continue to make Portland one of the most livable cities in the nation. Keep the bar high. You're designing the next 100 years. Thank you.
Thank you. Could I ask you a question?
Sure.
please? So you had a whole list of very good suggestions. Are these just your suggestions, or are these ideas shared broadly by members of the commission?
The suggestion for improvements?
Yes.
Or, I don't know. I think speaking with the commissioners would be a good idea on that. This is from experience. I think, improvements in collaboration and interdepartmental efficiency is always a good strategy, and it's difficult in any city.
Any chance I could get a copy of your written testimony?
Yes, I have those with me.
That'd be great. Thank you.
Good afternoon, Commissioners and Mr. Mayor. My name is Tom DeChara. I'm principal and owner of Cairn Pacific. We're a Portland-based, Portland-grown development company that's been most active in the building out the Slabtown neighborhood in Northwest Portland on the old Conway campus. That's kept us busy most recently, but I've been in the business for about 24 years now in different capacities. Started out for 8 years as an architect with GBD, so I have experience coming from that side of the business, and the last 16 years as a developer. I've been a frequent flyer in front of Design Commission over those years. I think preparing for this testimony, I came up with 14 buildings that I've entitled through the years, totaling about 2,700 residential units, plus a few office buildings and some grocery stores, including the New Seasons Slabtown store that we're particularly proud of. So I've been over in front of commission many times during those years, different commissions, and seen the process evolve quite a bit over those years as the city has grown tremendously during that time. Early in my career, as an architect, I'll admit that the process at times drove me crazy. Sometimes as a developer, I've complained about the process, the time it takes, its sometimes unpredictable nature. I've had more than a few healthy architectural debates with staff and commission through the years. But overall, if I look at it in its entirety, I would say that the process does result in better buildings citywide that would otherwise not be the case. It's helped ensure that we were building a city that will hold up over time with good streetscapes, great livability, and a quality pedestrian experience. That also ensures that we're listening to our neighbors. To see proof of all this, I think all you have to do is look to the east side of Portland, outside the design review overlay zones, for see projects that are getting built without design review scrutiny. There's a big difference. I'm a longtime East Sider, and I lament some of what's happening to East Side neighborhoods that haven't seen the scale and scope of development that we see in the downtown de-overlay zones. So I see a lot of missed opportunities there, and I personally am one that would advocate for extending the design review overlay versus pulling it back, that you may hear from other folks, but there's a big difference in quality. And I would say as a developer, have to compete with those buildings now. It didn't used to be necessarily the same submarket as it is today. As the city has grown, there's no real difference on an east side and a west side building, and having the same set of rules, I think, is something that we should be encouraging. So while the process can be lengthy and unpredictable at times, which, as was said before, developers don't like unpredictability, I appreciate that staff has always been accessible during the process and works hard to get to an approvable project. It's not always easy, but there's always a path to get there, in my experience. My most recent project, for example, in Slabtown called Saltwood, was a 2-block project containing about 350 units. We got through in one hearing without a DAR with unanimous vote. There were some circumstances on that one that paved the road for a smooth process, but it can be done if you work well with staff early, work with neighborhood, build support, as is mentioned, hire a good local design team, and really focus on the design guidelines and understanding the process. I think where people trip up is the people that don't go through that process and show up at a hearing without a positive staff report and not having gone through those steps. You have to kind of go through the process in order to get a good result. So, I mean, there are certainly, you probably hear a lot about projects that get stuck in design review process, but I think there are reasons always where that happens, and using good local talent certainly helps avoid those. So with that said, I do have a couple thoughts. Some of these have been touched on in terms of how the process can be improved and streamlined a little bit. First, empowering staff to use discretion and have more discretion during the process, and particularly after the process. As was mentioned before, there are often small details that change through the life of a project as it moves from design development into construction, things you can't anticipate at the design review level. So having staff have a little bit more discretion to kind of work through those details without triggering a new hearing is something that I would really encourage. And I know there are reasons in the past where certain projects have made changes that have caused changes in policy, which maybe I would say are a little overcorrected of late. We've been getting, check sheet items on very, very small things that may have changed from a design review application that aren't really significant. So I would encourage, more empowerment of staff to use discretion on what's really important, so to not clog up the system with little things. It's kind of been happening a little bit lately. I would encourage staff to focus on compliance with design guidelines. I think sometimes we get maybe into conversations about style that, in my view, don't always have a direct relationship with context and design guidelines. So keeping it to the design guidelines is always important in my mind. I think it's okay to approve a great project without changes if it comes through and is deserving it. We don't have to make changes just for the sake of making changes. And that being said, I don't think commissions should be afraid to force bad projects to start over if they're not following the design guidelines, and that they shouldn't have to apologize for that. I think they get criticism sometimes for projects that truly do need to be rethought before they move through the process. And then lastly, on the DAR process, this is something that, didn't exist when I first started in this business, was introduced as a way to get early feedback from Design Commission. It started out as a pretty informal, let's have a conversation about it. I think over the time it's evolved into almost a mini design review, which does cost time and money and a schedule. So my view is they should be used for more specific circumstances when there are unique circumstances you need to deal with, or you're deviating for whatever reason from a design guideline or a code guideline, but not necessarily a matter of course of a process. I think if you, like I said, if you follow the process, follow the design guidelines and build your team and address those concerns, you should be able to work through the Design Commission without a DAR. I think over all the years in those projects that I mentioned, I've never had a project take more than 2 hearings to get done. So maybe I've been lucky, but doesn't mean there hasn't been a lot of conversation on those, but you can get through there if you do your homework before. So in summary, I think while there is room for improvement, I think we're talking about small tweaks, not major overhauls. As was mentioned before, this is a complicated business. It takes time to get through the details. These are buildings that are going to outlive us all, so investing the time up front is an investment well made. Thank you.
Thank you.
So, and Tom, council is looking at 2 images of the 2 Saltwood buildings that were in the hearings room last week. So 2 blocks in Conway that were done in one hearing, right?
Yes.
Yeah, okay, thank you. Okay, one more person to testify, and it is Dave Oddie of the AIA Urban Design Panel in Holst Architecture. Dave is in Colorado this afternoon, and so he sends you this video. Oh, but there's no sound.
Julie, if we didn't have a technology hiccup, it just wouldn't be a normal hearing.
The fact that there is actual video is surprising to me. I am not the person who made this happen.
Greetings, Mayor and Commissioners.
You did it.
My name is Dave Oddie, and I'm wearing 3 hats today. First, representing the Urban Design Panel, a multidisciplinary team of local architects, planners, and landscape architects from the AIA, the APA, and the ASLA that assist the city in maintaining high standards of urban design by reviewing projects and policies related to our built environment. Second, representing my company, Holst Architecture, a firm of 40 designers in the Central East Side that have been helping make Portland special since 1992. Third, I'm representing myself as a citizen and resident that fell in love with this city the first time I stepped off the Max in Pioneer Square 20 years ago. Thank you for allowing me to speak remotely today as I'm traveling for a large project in Corvallis. The Urban Design Panel has been closely collaborating with BPS and design review staff on the Design Overlay Zone Analysis, or DOZA process, since its inception. In fact, early workshops and outreach facilitated by the Urban Design Panel helped identify the need for DOZA in the first place. While the process has been lengthy, its initial results have been extremely successful. Ask any architect that has been navigating design review over the past few years, and they will tell you that the process today is more efficient, more consistent, and more productive towards creating better buildings and places than in recent history. Positive change is happening. Now, the next steps for DOZA are critical. Crafting new guidelines and standards that will define what kind of city we want to be. So far, we like what we see. Keeping things simple with a version of the 10 Commandments of Urban Design my friend and mentor Patty Tillett recommended. The new guidelines are clear and focused on the right priorities. We strongly urge total support from City Council for BPS to work hand in hand with Kara and Tim and their team at Design Review to realize these new guidelines and standards that have been needed for a long time to ensure decisions about our city are well considered and built on sound urban design principles. At Holst Architecture, we have navigated every aspect of design review in recent years, including Type 2 procedures with staff-level decisions, Type 3 procedures with the Design Commission, as well as historic resource reviews with the Landmarks Commission. We have navigated these processes with a diverse range of project types, from thousands of units of market rate housing to hundreds of units of affordable housing, to community health and cultural centers, to tiny commercial storefronts. With this experience, there are two observations we wanted to share with you for future planning. One, discretionary, guideline-based processes are vital to fostering design excellence. And two, design advice requests, or DARs for short, help create a discretionary process that provides the right balance of flexibility with confidence. We do work in many jurisdictions, doing design review in cities all across the West. And far and away, the best results come from places that allow for design flexibility with discretionary review. Portland led the way a generation ago to create a discretionary process that fosters creativity with results that speak for themselves when you walk down our streets. There's a reason that cities like Seattle, Austin, and Boise look to Portland for our urban design playbook. And it's because our discretionary process is central to our success. A newer aspect of our city's process is the DAR. The design advice request is a voluntary process that was initially intended to create a venue for design teams and owners to get initial feedback before going too deep into a project with potentially flawed assumptions. What has evolved is a process that is seen by the best design firms and owners in the city as an elemental step to an efficient process with an appropriate amount of certainty. Holst has used the DAR process on both public and private projects, large and small, to get on the same page with the city early in our design process, to ultimately save time and money in the long run. Most recently, my deeply affordable modular co-housing design for transition projects in Kenton, called Lisa, went through a voluntary DAR, with the fees thoughtfully waived by the city. Because our design was atypical, we found the DAR process to be invaluable to discuss different solutions that better meet the intent of guidelines in a public forum that provided both flexibility and confidence for my client moving forward. Again, I want you to hear that the DAR for this project saved us time and money and aligned perfectly with our schedule. The process is not broken. The process works. Finally, as a citizen and resident, I wanted to finish with why I love this city. I love Portland because it breaks the rules. From that first decision in 1845 to create tiny, ever-walkable streets with 200-foot blocks, to 2015, when we opened a bridge for every conceivable mode of transit other than the car. Portland does things differently in ways that improve the built environment and enrich the human experience. Turn a parking lot into a piazza and tear up a highway to make way for a waterfront park. These are bold ideas that come from thinking creatively together for the common good. I would venture to say nothing great about Portland's design ever came from a checklist or a prescriptive set of rules that have a lowest common denominator. Yes, you need to have a baseline of what is deemed acceptable, but we love our city because of A+ design. We don't want to be like Houston and barely pass with a D. Design Review's discretionary process is decidedly a Portland way of doing things that encourages each of us to do better. And I urge you to give Design Review all your support and help us continue to create a city that we will love for generations to come. Thank you.
Thank you.
And that's it.
Julie,
very
Mayor,
much.
if I could.
Please.
Julie, I have a couple questions.
Sure.
I was reflecting on the few number of times on a type 3 that's been appealed to council where we've had a respectful disagreement with the commission. One of the areas we had a disagreement, and we provided a little more latitude, was a project that the Jupiter Hotel chose to go forward with. It's now been built, and I've been dying to ask you after the fact what your verdict is.
When you visit that building, you will likely notice that on the surfaces that are vertical or inverted, that the shingles are responding to gravity. And the way that shingles are attached, it's a pretty simple system. There are a few points that, for all intents and purposes, just simple nails that hold the shingles in place. And so there is an immense amount of gravity acting against those points where the shingles are attached. Some of them are already starting to slide.
Okay, so
I guess we know where.
I guess I should
polite, I
I
told
should have
you so.
assumed you were prepared for that. The other thing I just wanted to comment on is Dave in his presentation showcased Bud Clark comments, and one of the things that we did there was we decided to use a half block, not the whole block, an urban form building, not a suburban form building. And it opened the way to another building, which is going to be the health department building. And I wonder how many cities at the foot of what is such a marquee entrance, I mean, it is the foot of Broadway, it's our cultural district, has as two knockout buildings, one building that's for deeply affordable housing for low-income people, and the second a health department building, which together seem to speak to each other in an interesting way. I wonder what your thoughts are.
Yeah, so thank you for that question. I agree with you. Those two buildings are very prominent. And when we began the work on Bud Clark Commons, we looked at so many sites in the Old Town, Chinatown neighborhood. And that was, for all intents and purposes, a throwaway site. Nobody was interested in it because it had so many challenges that were associated with the on-ramps to the Broadway
But
Bridge.
as far as we could get from the Dirty Duck building.
Yes, that's right. But, now we have two new buildings that both have deep mission, and I think we need to be very attentive to what happens north of this site. What is the plan for a village underneath the Broadway Bridge? And how will those activities impact what is already a very impacted neighborhood? We need to be very thoughtful about how we move forward. And then, of course, there is the Broadway Corridor Master Plan area across the street, where the post office is, where buildings will be even taller and more present on our skyline than Bud Clark Commons, which is now a very petite building.
Diminutive, yeah.
Yeah,
Thank you.
yeah, very good. Thank you. Oh, footnote, Dave, Audie, and Holst Architecture have been selected to design the new affordable housing building that will be going up at Southeast 30th and Powell.
Excellent. Thank you.
So, do we have time for a question or two?
Of course, yeah.
Great presentation. I mean, really, I really liked how you highlighted some of the work you've been involved with this year. But I was just noticing, I didn't hear any mention of the words, green building, sustainable design. Are these things like out of fashion now, and they're just not?
Well, we work with the guidelines.
Okay.
And the guidelines have not yet been updated. So, Title
When
33,
you
the
say
zoning code,
Okay.
addresses, bird-safe glazing and green roofs and being PV ready. So buildings that roll through the design, the hearings room have those elements about them. But our guidelines specifically have not yet reached a point in development, our new guidelines have not yet reached a point in development where we see that language in our guidelines. There's a little bit of it in the purpose statement. We have swapped out the word
When you say
quality.
our guidelines, are you talking about the design commission?
I'm talking about the Central City Fundamental Design Guidelines, the Community Design Guidelines, and the actual guideline documents that we have for many different areas in our city. They will all be updated, but it takes a lot of time for the Bureau of Planning and Sustainability to move through that process. So our revised, doing this all wrong. Our revised purpose statement, we've changed quality and permanence to quality and long-term resilience. That's kind of our first nod towards a lot of the ideas that rolled out of the 2035 planning process.
Okay, thanks.
Very good. I will accept a motion.
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion from Commissioner Fish, a second from Commissioner Saltzman. Carla, please call the roll.
Udaley?
Well, thank you to Chair Livingston and all the commission members for volunteering your time and expertise to the city. I also want to thank staff and commission members who have worked hard to implement DOZA recommendations to make sure the design review process is more effective and efficient. And I think we're doing great, but we still need to look for ways to improve the process, and especially for vital projects such as affordable housing. I vote aye.
Fritz?
Thank you very much for an excellent presentation. Thank you, everybody who attended and participated. Thanks to Tim Heron and Cara Fioravanti and others who do such great work staffing this commission, and as well as doing those type 2 reviews. Really great to see all those statistics and know that thousands of units of housing are coming online very, very shortly. So the work that the council has been doing is definitely proving successful. And that gives you a lot of work to do, but I can see that you really enjoy it and appreciate the opportunity to contribute to a wonderful Portland and continuing to be that. So thank you for all your work. Aye.
Fish?
Julie, thank you for an outstanding presentation. I think it's a high watermark for one of the presentations from the commission. And I appreciate the way you wove in the voices and the buildings and sort of educated us. So first of all, thank you for an outstanding presentation to you, to the commission members, and to the staff. Thank you for focusing us on the long-term health and success of our city. When you have a housing crisis, when you have growing pains that we're going through, when you have a fractured narrative about what the future of Portland is, it's very easy for people to become critics. And we have our critics about the whole design review process, about the commitment to quality, opportunity, sustainability. We have our critics. But thank you for reminding us that we're building a city for future generations. And here's one of my sort of guideposts. In all the time that I've been on this council, and believe it or not, we're now just eclipsed the 10-year mark. I went from being the most junior to the most senior member, now with Dan departing. I have never heard someone come before us and say, we'd like a crappy park, so let's value engineer it down so it's as crappy as possible. We'd like a library that we're ashamed of. Please, no design elements on the library, just fill the stacks with books, and we're happy with the crappiest building you can come up with. We like send our kids to schools that are crappy and build for the short term. And please, nothing that gives us any pride in our schools. And on and on and on. I've actually never heard those appeals in this room. Portlanders are very proud of their city, but they also take the long-term view. And they want to build something that we can be proud of, not just today, but tomorrow, and as many of your guest speakers reminded us, for 100 years. So the mayor and I have been on a circuit recently on a couple of ballot measures, pleading the case for ballot measures 102 and 26-199. People will make up their own minds when the ballot shows up. But what has struck me in that debate is how contingent, or let's put it this way, how much debate is going on about things that I thought were bedrock. I thought we had resolved the issue of the urban growth boundary. I think we actually have to fight that battle all over again and make the case, because I think a lot of people who've moved here in the last, say, 5 or 10 years aren't clear about what the trade-off was. And I think there are people using this moment opportunistically to make a pitch for either eliminating or greatly weakening the urban growth boundary. So I think that's a fight we have to take on anew. I think design guidelines have been thrown into this narrative that a handful of people have pitched, along with undue delays in the permitting process and a few other things. that essentially urges us to throw the baby out with the bathwater. That in this time where we need lots of development, we've got to streamline the process and potentially compromise on our values. We see it clearly in the affordable housing side. There is a wholesale line of attack on the idea of building affordable housing for the long term that has quality, where people are paid a living wage, that's sustainable, and that is built in high opportunity areas. And conversely, there's a narrative about moving the housing to the corners of our neighborhood, of our city, where the dirt is the cheapest, building for the short term and worrying about, rebuilding later. And these are not idle conversations. These are conversations that are driving editorial board decisions. They are driving opinion leaders, because there are some very noisy voices, including people we didn't hear from here today, who are developers that apparently are much more frustrated than the panel that we've had and are not bought into the long-term benefits to our city, as your guests so clearly articulated. So I am inspired by what you presented today, but I'm also just throwing up a cautionary flag that I think we have to relitigate some of these issues more broadly. And I think some of our critics have managed through anecdotal evidence and through complaining to certain opinion leaders, have been able to change the dynamic a little bit in the conversation. And I'd hate for us to lose our foothold here. We can always improve. You made it clear in your presentation, and many of your guests said there are things we can do. And I love the sound, and I hope the mayor takes this up, of giving staff more discretionary authority. We hear that in almost every area of our work, where we want to empower people to have the ability to make decisions and back them up to streamline the process. But I appreciate that you've highlighted that we have something unique and special here, and that to abandon it would come at a cost. And that we have to weigh benefit and cost. But I am, after having done the circuit to editorial boards and a lot of work on this ballot measure season, I'm officially alarmed at how anecdotes have baked into strong opinions, particularly among opinion leaders in places like editorial boards that have some influence. And I think we have our work cut out for us. But anyway, thank you for an outstanding presentation. I'm proud to accept this report. Aye.
Saltzman?
Well, I want to thank all of the Design Commission members for the enormous amount of time and sacrifice you make in order to serve our city. So thank you. I know your meetings, I read about how long they are and can't believe it. But you stay engaged and you do your work, and so we owe you a debt of gratitude for that. And I think your work is showing itself in our city, and I think we are rightly proud of our design standards, our standards of excellence. I think, we probably, not being an architect or a designer, I think there's so much that just goes by me when I walk by a building. I really don't appreciate probably every aspect of the design and how it influences me and the environment. But when I, listen to your presentations and see your award winners, I start to get it. So I really thank you for maintaining being our standard bearers as well. And, finally, I just want to, thank Tad for 8 years of dedicated service. And I really appreciate your service at the Design Commission, as I do for all of you. And I'm very proud of our design community, too. I think they really, well, they know we impose high standards, but I think they impose high standards on themselves as well as a result of knowing and loving this city. So thank you so much. Aye.
Wheeler?
Well, there's a lot of dedication in this room, and it is going without saying that you're making our city a better place to be, more vibrant, more livable, more desirable for everybody in this community. So thank you for that. When I look at the work that you're doing alongside developers in this community, it is very obvious to me that Portland is rapidly walking towards being a globally recognized city. And certainly the integrity of our architecture is a huge part of that. As the commissioner now in charge of the Bureau of Development Services, I look forward to working with the Design Commission to talk about how we unfold the Central City Plan and the 2035 plan, how we actually continue to evolve these values, make what changes, pragmatic changes we can to improve the process, but not lose sight of the core goals of what make this city a really great place to be. So thank you. You have made a huge investment in time, in energy. You bring a lot of talent to the table, and by doing so, you're benefiting all of us. So I'm really appreciative of it. And I'm not saying that as mayor, I'm just saying that as somebody who lives in the city, loves the city, and appreciates the way that we come together to address our mutual needs. So thank you for that. I certainly vote aye, the report's accepted. Thank you. We'll see you
Thank you.
next time.
Mayor, can we take a 2-minute break?
Yeah, let's, why don't we take we'll be generous. We'll make it a 3-minute break, and then we'll come back for the Latinx celebration, Latinx Heritage Month celebration. Carla, can you please read our final item for this afternoon?
We have
It's-
some regular
I don't think it's
items
the final item.
after this. So
We've got a
You're
bunch.
right.
Yeah.
Okay, I stand corrected.
Unless you want to make it
Let's
the
take
final
all back
item.
and Take two. Carla, can you please read our next item?
Yes, item 1091, proclaim September 15 to October 15 to be Latinx Heritage Month.
Commissioner Fritz.
Thank you, Mayor. As we all know, we had to reschedule the Latinx Heritage Month proclamation to today due to council member absences last week. I realize this puts us outside of the officially observed Latinx Heritage Month timeframe of September 15th through October 15th, but really it shouldn't be just 1 month anyway. Any time should be a good time to celebrate the Latinx cultures and people. I want to thank our Latinx PDX City of Portland Employees Affinity Group for again bringing the proclamation to council, especially Linda Castillo from the Office of Community and Civic Life, Cynthia Castro from my office, Tatiana Elahad. I could do it perfect. I can do it perfectly.
Okay.
Elahadi, right?
Alejandro.
From the Office of Equity and Human Rights. So by the time I'm done with being its commissioner again, I will have it just like that. Francisca Garcia from the Office of Management and Finance, Mariana Garcia Medina from Commissioner Fish's office, and Michelle Rodriguez from the Office of Community and Civic Life. We are going to ask Mayor Wheeler to do the honors and read the English version of the proclamation. Then Tatiana will read the Spanish version, tell us more about the adoption of the term Latinx, and hear from guest speakers.
Very good, thank you. Whereas Latinx Heritage Month in the United States extends historically over 5 centuries and has been a consistent and vital influence in our country's growth and prosperity. And whereas Latinx culture is tied to Iberian ancestry, the rich tapestry of our culture recognizes that Latinx are multiracial and multicultural and also trace their historical roots to indigenous and African ancestry. The Latinx population represents people with origins from 23 different countries, including the United States, Mexico, Puerto Rico, the Dominican Republic, Cuba, Guatemala, Belize, El Salvador, Costa Rica, Honduras, Nicaragua, Panama, Colombia, Peru, Ecuador, Paraguay, Uruguay, Brazil, Venezuela, Argentina, Bolivia, and Chile. They reflect an array of distinct and vibrant cultures that have enriched our community in many valuable ways. And whereas growing at the same pace as the nation, Oregon's most recent data shows that 13.1% of the state's population is now Latinx. Since 2010, Oregon has added nearly 91,000 Latinx residents. In Portland, there are 67,551 people of Latinx descent, making up 10.4% of the city's population. While Portland's overall population grew by 1.3% between 2016 and 2017, the rate of growth for the city's Latinx population was 3.8% during the same period. And whereas in 2017, 66.4% of Latinx in Portland were native-born, the median age for Latinx in Portland is 28.4 years. And whereas Latinx have supported Portland's economy with a myriad of contributions in the fields of commerce, science, technology, public service, health, and many more. Today, their purchasing power in Portland is nearly $4 billion. And whereas Portland recognizes the many organizations, institutions, and people helping Latinx overcome disparities, such as poor health outcomes and low educational attainment, working tirelessly to ensure they remain a flourishing community. And whereas continued access to jobs and livable wages for Oregon Latinx is essential for our state to thrive. Latinx currently makes up 7.1% of the city of Portland's workforce. To help connect more Latinx to city jobs and to support them throughout their careers with the city, the Latinx PDX City Employee Affinity Group was reestablished in 2014. Latinx PDX has reached over 75 members and continues to grow. Now, therefore, I, Ted Wheeler, the mayor of the city of Portland, Oregon, do hereby proclaim September 15th to October 15th, 2018, to be Latinx Heritage Month in Portland and encourage all residents to observe this month.
Thank you.
Good afternoon.
Hello, buenas tardes.
Buenas tardes.
My name is Tatiana Elejalde, and I'm with the Office of Equity and Human Rights. Por cuanto la herencia Latinx en los Estados Unidos se extiende históricamente más de 5 siglos y ha sido una influencia constante y vital en el crecimiento y prosperidad de nuestro país, y por cuanto la cultura Latinx está ligada a raíces ibéricas, a las que se suman la gran riqueza y diversidad multicultural y multirracial de nuestras culturas indígenas y africanas. La población Latinx representa más de 22 diferentes países de origen, incluyendo Estados Unidos, México, Puerto Rico, República Dominicana, Cuba, Guatemala, Belice, El Salvador, Costa Rica, Honduras, Nicaragua, Panamá, Colombia, Perú, Ecuador, Paraguay, Uruguay, Brasil, Venezuela, Argentina, Bolivia y Chile. Reflejan una variedad de culturas distintas y valiosas que han enriquecido nuestra comunidad en forma notable. Y por cuanto la población Latinx de Oregon está creciendo al mismo ritmo que la tasa nacional, los Latinx representan el 13.1% de la población estatal. Desde el 2010, Oregon ha añadido casi 91,000 residentes Latinx. En Portland hay más de 67,551 personas de origen Latinx que representan el 10.4% de la población, mientras que la población general de Portland creció un 1.3% entre el 2016 y 2017. La tasa de crecimiento de la población Latinx de la ciudad fue 3.8% en el mismo periodo de tiempo. Y por cuanto en el 2017, 66.4% de los Latinx en Portland eran nacidos en los Estados Unidos. La edad mediana de Latinx en Portland es de 28.4 años de edad. Y por cuanto la población Latinx ha contribuido a la economía de Portland con un sinnúmero de aportaciones en las áreas de comercio, ciencia, tecnología, servicio público y salud, entre otras. Actualmente, su poder de adquisición en Portland es de casi $4,000 millones. Y por cuanto la ciudad de Portland reconoce la multitud de organizaciones, instituciones y gente ayudando a la población Latinx a superar disparidades tales como los indicadores rezagados de salud y nivel de logro académico, trabajando incansablemente para asegurar que sigan siendo una comunidad próspera, y por cuanto el acceso a puestos de trabajo y sueldos dignos para los Latinx en Oregon es fundamental para la prosperidad de nuestro estado. La población Latinx forma un 7.1% de la fuerza laboral del Ayuntamiento de la ciudad de Portland. La Asociación de Empleados Latinx PDX fue restablecida en el 2014 con el propósito de conectar a Latinx con puestos de trabajo en el Ayuntamiento de la ciudad de Portland y apoyarlos a lo largo de sus carreras. Actualmente, Latinx PDX cuenta con más de 75 miembros y sigue creciendo. Por lo tanto, yo, Ted Wheeler, alcalde de la ciudad de Portland, Oregon, proclamo que del 15 de septiembre al 15 de octubre del 2018 sea reconocido como el mes de la herencia Latinx en Portland e invito a todos los habitantes a celebrar este mes. Now I'm going to speak a little bit about adopting the term Latinx in today's proclamation and what it stands for. Our commitment to Latinx is based on justice and inclusivity. It affirms the lives of LGBTQ, gender fluid, and non-binary Latinx people and recognizes the experience of intersectional identities. By stating Latinx in this proclamation, as a city government, we are taking a step towards showing a commitment to a culture of inclusivity and belonging to our employees and our community. This is about language justice. This is about being seen. Language and culture are fluid. Many in the Latinx community here in the United States were not feeling seen or included in the binary expression of the Spanish language. Not everyone who identifies as Latinx speaks Spanish. This is about creating spaces for ourselves through our language so that we're inclusive of all identities within the Latinx community. Because we are unique as we band together in solidarity, representing the beautiful diversity of all our cultures, backgrounds, histories, languages, and identities. In the U.S., the history of us coming together over what we have in common while celebrating the differences is how we have organized and created community. When we organize, we have greater political power, and when we organize, we recognize that we have significant consumer power. With political power, voice, and increased justice across our common goals, we can help the next generations achieve greater inclusivity and justice and amplify our voices. Every community knows its own history, and we know colonialism played a part in the suppression and erasure of indigenous and African languages in the Americas. Those languages often had structures that were not binary in the way Spanish is. In closing, this is about being seen, inclusivity, and a sense of belonging and justice. Our city affinity group, previously named Unidos Latinos Americanos, or ULA, has changed its name to Latinx PDX. Sorry, can I get you? Sure. Let's see, what do I need to do for make this pop up? Uh-oh. Well, okay. I'm going to put our logo up in just a moment. We've changed our name, and I just want to say that this affinity group, I can speak for myself, provides a great sense of connection and community as a city employee. Thank you. And I want to thank everyone involved with the group and thank everyone involved with making today happen. I'd like to introduce our invited speakers, Myra Arreola from Prosper Portland, Director of Social Equity and Communications, and Diana Nunez, Executive Director of the Hispanic Metropolitan Chamber, who I might note their website has the term Latinx on it. Okay, thank you for being here.
Thank you. Good afternoon, Mayor Wheeler and Commissioners. My name is Mayra Arreola, and I'm the Director of Social Equity, Policy, and Communications at Prosper Portland. I want to appreciate your time and the invitation to be here to share a little bit of my story and what it has meant to be, to me, to live in this country as a Latinx. My journey as an Oregonian started in 2007. At my arrival, I had no history, no network, no community, and I realized quickly that reaching out and hard work were not going to be enough, and that having somebody believe in me was going to be crucial. It became clear that I needed to establish roots, to feel centered, and to have the opportunities to advance professionally. I needed three things: seek through personal connections, work really, really hard, and have somebody open a door. That realization has stayed through my trajectory in this country, and I am extremely thankful and appreciative of all the people that have been a source of support and acted as mentors, provided guidance, and validated my experiences as a Latinx, immigrant, person of color, non-native English speaker, and as a woman. I simply will not be sitting here today if it had not been for all of them. Given this experience, I am mission and values driven. These values drove me to join Prosper Portland and its incredible team to keep making progress towards building an equitable economy, to ensure that opportunities for wealth creation are accessible to all Portlanders, and to support our communities by building trust, listening and learning from our past, and increasing transparency and access to resources. One example that comes to mind when thinking about trust and access is a quick story on the power of opportunities and how they can change lives. Some years ago, I worked in rural communities doing economic community and leadership development with Latinos. At the time, we were partnering with high schools to deliver leadership programs to students. One of our main goals was to invite them to participate in other programs we offered at the time to keep advancing their leadership skills and their connections with the larger community, and to bring much-needed Latinx voices and perspectives to spaces where they had not been a part of. I remember clearly a student that did not have much hope. This student was brilliant and about to finish high school. She had no resources, no support, and no understanding of the process to apply for college. Both her parents worked full-time, and she was a primary caretaker of her younger siblings. She did not believe college was an opportunity for her. Once the student shared this story, she was surrounded by local mentors and leaders that coached her throughout the process of the application, and she ended up getting a full scholarship to go to college. Her life changed instantly because of the combination of hard work and opportunity with the power of community. The Latinx community experiences a lot of barriers, yet today I really want to focus on one opportunity that you have been working really hard and focusing on as a city. I believe that we still have the opportunity to enhance diversifying the workforce, and most importantly, to open leadership positions to people that represent the richness of our diverse city. Once those opportunities are open, the real test is on retention. Retaining staff that have different approaches, that will bring new styles and ideas, that speak different languages, that will work to dismantle racism and oppressive systems, that would challenge the status quo, and that understand the power of collaboration and community, that's when true change happens. Experiencing racism and oppression is not easy, and having people around you that know what it means, and more importantly, what it feels, is a need, not a privilege. For this reason, I just want to take a minute to recognize the power of the voices of the Latinx community and appreciate all the amazing leaders affecting change in their spheres of influence. Muchas gracias por su coraje, por su valentía, y por su persistencia. And thanks to all of you for your time and the opportunity to be here today.
Thank you.
Thanks. Thank you, Mara.
Hello, my name is Diana Nunez, and I am the Executive Director of the Hispanic Metropolitan Chamber. We are a 25-year-old nonprofit organization and business chamber whose mission is to advance Latinx economic and community vitality through business development, leadership, education, and advocacy. I was asked to briefly share a little bit about my story as an Oregonian, which started about 45 years ago with my parents immigrating from Mexico, the state of Puebla and the state of Morelos, to Los Angeles, California. I was born in Los Angeles, California, raised there, went to the University of Texas at Austin for my undergraduate degree in microbiology and clinical laboratory science. I was a failed computer science major, and I graduated instead in microbiology and became a researcher in oral antibiotic health, or oral health and antibiotic research. I found that being a researcher was very lonely and had a lot of solitude involved in it, and I much more wanted to be connected to work that I felt would make a difference, and I could see the more immediate results. At the same time, Texas was not also feeling like I fit with the state there and the politics that were happening around the same time, and so 16 years ago, I moved to Portland, Oregon, and became a Portlander and an Oregonian. And I'm proud to do so. I think I have found many opportunities here that I might have not found elsewhere. And one of the opportunities was working for Multnomah County Library. I became a librarian and I got my graduate degree in library science and research, specifically around early literacy for bilingual early literacy learners and English language learners. That work is something that led me to wanting to understand more where the funding of these programs that were so valuable to our communities that needed most was coming from. And at the same time, I found, or the Multnomah County Library allowed me to participate in a leadership program, leadership development program with the Hispanic Metropolitan Chamber. This was about 9 years ago, which opened my eyes and my doors to what it meant to be civically engaged, to know who your elected officials and leaders are, what it meant to be on boards and commissions, and it really ignited a passion in where I wanted to be and where I wanted to sit in my career. At the same time, the city and the county were having discussions around compression and what sort of funding needed to happen to what sort of government entities. And my program that I worked for over 8 years, Raising a Reader, which touched 14,000 families and provided early literacy opportunities, was cut from the city's budget, which made me even more want to make sure that I knew where the funding was coming from for the programs that I wanted to work on. I networked my way in through what I learned from the Hispanic Metropolitan Chamber Leadership Program, and it took a little bit of time, but I worked for City of Portland former Mayor Charlie Hales as one of his outreach directors on policy, which again, him being in his office really allowed me to understand the mechanics of what it meant to be in policy and how it affects our communities upstream and downstream, and how policy can actually be an amazing tool for the advancement of all our communities communities, not just the Latino community. So I'm proud to have been in the city and worked with the Office of Equity and Human Resources. And I'm proud that I am continuing to have that partnership with the City of Portland through my work at the Hispanic Metropolitan Chamber. One of the questions that was asked of me or put before me was how I see myself as a leader. And I don't know that I see myself as a leader so much as I think that those that came before me were able to open doors, give me access and opportunities, and I want to do the same for those that will come behind me. So my job is, in my work, is to make sure that I'm finding access and opportunity wherever possible, and through policy, through funding mechanisms, through new and innovative ways to work with my community. There are so many memorable stories of how I work with my community and the progress and opportunities that have come about because of how we work with our community. We have a leadership program that every year 50 students are awarded scholarships. Mariana Garcia Medina, Commissioner Fish's policy director, I don't know if she's a director policy person, was one of those recipients. We got to engage with her, and she was one of our speakers at our last event, celebrating her talents, her experience, and where she is now as the exceptional person she is, making changes in her pathway. We also work with businesses, so we see 91% Latinx businesses that come through our door to either start, grow, adapt, succeed. We help them develop the necessary skills needed to advance their businesses, to grow their businesses, and we see 52% of those businesses are women, which is the national trend when it comes to business nationally. The Latino community by far is creating and starting businesses, and women in the Latinx community are head of households, and single women are creating those businesses and starting them. So we want to make sure that we're supporting them and finding the tools. We work with Prosper Portland to be able to do some of that work, and we are glad to be partners with them because we see over 350 businesses a year, and we see them succeeding. I think what obstacles I see in front of our community here locally and regionally is that we have a workforce issue and a pipeline issue as far as we have a young community, 28.5 is the average age, and we need to be a conduit for them to be finding these workforce opportunities and job opportunities, and also to be starting businesses in the innovative and tech sectors. We have these business clusters that are here, and they need us to make sure our talent is ready, and our talent is ready. We need to just be connecting them. So investment in innovation in tech and how our communities of color are connecting to those opportunities is vastly important to the future of our economic region being successful and continuing to be progressive. I appreciate the opportunity to speak with you a little bit about the work that I do, my appreciation for the city and the work that they do in connecting resources to us, and we hope to continue that partnership moving forward. And I look forward to celebrating and appreciate celebrating Hispanic heritage with the City of Portland. Thank you.
Thank you.
That's the presentation.
That's it. Yes, thank you.
Great.
Very good. Thank you.
Thank you. Does anybody else have comments that they would like to share? Because this is a proclamation, it's not a vote, so if anybody else would like to say anything?
Well, I'm just curious, is Latinx like a standard term now, or is this something that just started locally and is growing, or?
I think it's a national movement. I think the term Hispanic, which is something that we're working on as well as an organization, is an antiquated term that is, rooted in census language. And so moving towards Latino as more inclusive, and then Latino being binary. So then moving to be much more inclusive with X standing for whatever your identity stands for. So
I think it's originating from national social justice movements, and is, you're going to find a variety of people engaging with the term differently even within the Latinx community, but it's definitely a term of inclusivity.
That's appreciated. Thank you.
Thank you.
Oh, I'm sorry, I would also like to mention that we have a reception following this with tres leches cake and agua fresca, so if you would like to join us, please do.
That sounds really good.
We'll
Just
race
what I
through the
don't
rest of our
need.
agenda
Yeah. Exactly.
It should have been the last.
Good. Could, Michelle, do you have your camera with us? Could we get a photo?
Commissioner
Oh, I'm sorry, Commissioner Udaley.
I feel like I would be remiss in my duties as the newly appointed Arts Commissioner if I didn't mention some of the important contributions of the Latinx community to our arts and culture landscape. So I wanted to mention that recently RAC and the Hispanic Metropolitan Chamber teamed up to create Latinidades.
Latinidades.
Yes. An art show celebrating Latinx artists, which included 11 local Portland Latinx artists. And I'd like to give a special shout out as well to a couple women who I'm big fans of, Daniela Del Mar and Camila Arrea, who run Letra Chuca Press, which is a female Latinx-owned letterpress operation dedicated to empowering underrepresented, oh my gosh, it's been a long day, underrepresented communities. Just a couple examples of how Latinx Portlanders are shaping our city and community, and I'm excited to get to work with them and many others to highlight their contributions as we strive to bring more equity and diversity to our arts funding. So thank you.
Thank you.
Commissioner Fritz.
Thank you. So folks might be really interested in the Office of Equity and Human Rights Workforce Demographics Dashboard, as was mentioned in the proclamation with the statistics on how we're doing. We want to thank Matt Lim for managing it for us. He has been able to replace Latino wherever it appeared with Latinx, so that's a good thing. While we have seen a growing number of Latinx individuals joining the city workforce, they are still underrepresented in higher level positions that pay competitive wages. We need to do more to retain Latinx employees and advance them, which I personally have been doing with Cristina Nieves, who's been with me for 5 years and has been a leader in what is now Latinx PDX, and is the brains and passion and diligence behind the Open and Accountable Elections program, which will open up opportunities for a lot of folks too. Also, previously Goldan Salazar was a member of your leadership program, and she's now on a year's leave of absence teaching in Ecuador. So I was pleased to hear that. And Cynthia Castro, after 5 years in Parks, is now one of my policy advisors. And I'm also welcoming Yesenia Carrillo, who just an amazing group of women that Tim, we tolerate my chief of staff, and he supports us all. And so I just want to personally mention how very important the Latinx PDX has been to me to support the work that I've done over the last 10 years, and thank you.
Can I just throw in, thank you for the shout out to Mariana Garcia Medina. I thought, I've been to a number of the Hispanic Chamber luncheons. I thought her speech, I'm biased,
No,
but I
think you were
thought,
correct.
I thought it was a perfect speech.
Fantastic.
And she did such a beautiful job telling her story, and her family, her mother and father sat at our table. And my regret is I'm the only member of my family that's not bilingual. Everyone else, my 2 kids and my wife are bilingual, and it's a wonderful gift to have the gift of language and to understand culture. Mariana has the hardest job in my office. She is my scheduler. She has a policy portfolio. She's the office manager, and in her free time, she's one of our most high-profile dreamers, making the case that it is high time that America resolve that issue once and for all. We can ill afford to lose talent like her. So thank you for acknowledging her, and thank you for your excellent presentation.
Very good. Could we get a photo up front?
And then the reception is in the atrium from 4 to 5.
Thank you. Well done. Thanks a lot. Thank you so much. Yeah, it's good to see you. Thanks a lot. Good to see you. Likewise. Thank you.
Oh, my goodness.
All right, next up is a second reading. Carla, could you please read item 1092?
Authorize a contract with Century West Engineering Corporation for professional services for the design of the Stark and Buckman East reconstruction and Green Streets, project number E10216, for $1,610,883.
This is a second reading. There's already been a presentation and public testimony. Colleagues, any further discussion? Seeing none, Carla, please call the roll.
Udaly,
Who knew that second reading would be two of the sweetest words in the English language? Aye.
Fritz.
Aye.
Fish.
Aye.
Saltzman.
Aye.
Wheeler.
Aye, the ordinance is adopted. And next up, item 1093.
Accept a boating facility grant in the amount of $86,055 from the Oregon State Marine Board for the Swan Island Boat Ramp Facility Design and Permitting Project.
Commissioner Fish.
Colleagues, as one of the few public boating facilities on the Willamette River in Portland, Portland Parks and Recreation Swan Island Boat Ramp receives very heavy use. The city is experiencing increased maintenance expenses, and the existing ramp, docks, and pilings are in very poor condition. Through this ordinance, Portland Parks and Recreation would like to receive grants from the Oregon State Marine Board and the Oregon Department of Fish and Wildlife to improve this community asset. Today, we have Brett Horner, Planning Manager, and Maya Argarwal, Planner from Portland Parks and Recreation, to provide a brief presentation about these two grants. Welcome.
Thank you and good afternoon. We're happy to be here and have this item before you. And
Hold one sec. Mayor,
Yes.
can we have item 1094 read in concert?
Please read 1094 as well, Carla.
Accept a grant in the amount of $86,055 from the Oregon Department of Fish and Wildlife for the Swan Island Boat Ramp Facility Design and Permitting Project.
Thank you.
thank you, Commissioner. And again, we're happy to be here and have this item before you. We wanted to highlight that it's a very good example of leveraging our limited operations and maintenance dollars with partners to really solve and address a urgent maintenance need in our park system. Maya has a short slideshow. Before she starts, I would like to thank, because this project has spanned two of our commissioners, I'd like to thank both Commissioners Fritz and Commissioner Fish for their support on this.
Good afternoon, Mayor Wheeler and Commissioners. We're here today to discuss Swan Island Boat Ramp and to ask the council to accept grant funding for design and permit submittal for improvements to the facility. To orient you to the location of the facility, the Willamette River flows south to north through the city of Portland until its confluence with the Columbia River. Swan Island is bordered by the Willamette River and Swan Island Lagoon. Swan Island Boat Ramp, indicated in this image by the red star, is located just north of Central City. Let's zoom in a bit and see it in more detail. The boat ramp facility was built in the 1980s by the Port of Portland. The City of Portland Bureau of Environmental Services acquired Swan Island Boat Ramp in 1996 with the intention of building a wet weather facility for the combined sewer overflow project. In 2003, it was determined that the site did not fit the needs for the project and was declared surplus. The city, which is committed to maintaining the parcel in public ownership for recreational purposes, has transferred ownership of the parcel from BES to Parks. Swan Island Boat Ramp is one of the 3 motorized boating facilities on the Willamette River operated by Parks. Now let's take a look at the key elements that comprise the site. The first element is the ramp. The ramp is the paved portion that boaters use to put their boats in the water. They maneuver their vehicle and boat trailer, backing down the ramp and launching the boat into the lagoon. Once the boat is launched, they drive away and park their vehicle and trailer in the parking lot. The second element is the floats. Boarding floats serve as a means to help safely and efficiently launch and retrieve boats and load and unload boaters. Boaters also use the floats to load gear into their watercraft and to tie up for a short time. The third element is the piles. Piles are slender members, typically wood or steel, driven into the ground and used to maintain the horizontal position of the floats by resisting loads that are applied by floats, boats, current, wind, and waves. As one of the few public boating facilities on the Willamette River in Portland, Swan Island Boat Ramp receives heavy use. During the fishing season, the facility is filled to capacity with boaters putting in, taking out, and waiting to do so. However, the facility does have some challenges. The existing boat ramp is not wide enough for heavy morning and evening concentrated use. The toe of the ramp is too short and in deteriorated condition. The boarding floats are not long enough and are at the end of their useful life. The wooden piles and the ramp are in poor condition, making it difficult for boaters and anglers to access Swan Island Lagoon and the Willamette River. Swan Island Boat Ramp is important to the city, and it's identified as an integral part of city river access infrastructure in several planning documents. To improve safety for boaters and the public, Portland Parks recently was awarded grant number 1623 from the Oregon State Marine Board in the amount of $86,055, along with another grant from the Oregon Department of Fish and Wildlife Sport Fish Restoration Program in the amount of $86,055. Combined with a parks match of $114,739, these funds will cover costs to prepare 60% design drawings and submit permit applications for the replacement of the boat ramp, boarding floats, and piles. The total cost of this first phase of the project is $286,848. Acceptance of the Marine Board and Department of Fish and Wildlife grant funds represents a first step in bringing the Swan Island Boat Ramp facility up to full functionality and improving safety. Construction would not be covered under this grant. Future phases would include design and issued permits and construction. Parks intends to apply for future grants for full design, permit issuance, and construction.
Can I make sure I understand that slide? So when you say 60% design permit submittal, does that mean 60% of the design permit submittal process?
No, it's,
What does that mean?
it means that the drawings are taken to a 60% stage where there's some good knowledge of the detail of how the project would work, and those are submitted as permit to gain permits.
Okay, so those are more conceptual as opposed to the actual designs that will be used to build.
To build, right.
Okay,
They're
I
completeness
see.
level.
Okay,
Yeah.
thanks, that's helpful.
Sure. So we asked the council to accept the two grants. The first from the Oregon State Marine Board for $86,055, and the second from the Oregon Department of Fish and Wildlife for $86,055. These two funding sources, in combination with our matching funds, will be used to implement the Swan Island Boat Ramp facility design and permitting project. The ordinance language is noted on the slide. Thank you very much for your time, and we'll take any questions.
I noticed the pilings were wood in the example.
That's correct.
That you gave, but it seems like the more modern ones we see, including city facilities, are made out of metal. Is that the intention here, to replace it with something more durable?
That's correct.
Okay, very good.
Yeah.
Will the dock facility, the floats, be the same size and scale, or will they be bigger, or what's your thinking there?
So what we're thinking right now is that they would accommodate, they may be a little bit bigger, but the key is that they would accommodate two-way traffic. Instead of being off to the side and accommodating one-way traffic in and out, they would be in the middle of the ramp. So,
Interesting.
so people could be moving in and out on either side. So I'm not sure if they would necessarily be bigger. I'm guessing they would be. They might also be made out of a different material. They could be aluminum.
Okay, but that's sort of to be determined.
That's right.
Got it. Okay, and who owns the property immediately to the south? Is that the city?
It's the city.
Very good. Are there any plans for that, or is that just retained?
Brett, you gave me a little tutorial on
Yeah.
the space to the north and the south. Why don't you give us a quick, or either one of you, give us a
Yeah, if you want to roll back to that
Yeah, sure.
bigger slide. So the property there is managed by Parks, and the sort of dirt open space that you see that's not a parking lot is actually used as a maintenance facility for us. And we have a large bark chip maker, I would call it, that's called the Beast, and it makes wood chips for use in our park system. And we've had a hard time finding a good location for it. This one actually ended up being a really good spot for that because of its industrial zoning.
The Beast. Now, you have to admit, that was a more interesting answer than y'all thought, right? There it is.
And what are some of the potential long-term uses for that dirt?
So the Marine Board is very interested in actually expanding this facility. We have looked at reorienting the parking lot, trying to use the parcel more efficiently. The bark chip machine actually needs a lot of space and a lot of storage area to keep the bark chip material. So we haven't done any long-term planning on it, but for the immediate future, it is for the bark chip operations. We do have a trail that comes through there too. The regional trail for the Willamette Greenway comes right past the boat area.
That concludes our presentation.
Very good. Is there any public testimony on this item?
Yes, we have one person, Lightning Super Creativity.
Lightning, you get some kind of award today for sticking it out all day.
Yes, my name is Lightning. I represent Lightning Super Creativity. One of the problems I have on this is that when it wasn't going to be used for the original use, the intention of building a wet weather facility, I really don't think it should have been transferred to Parks. I think it should have been surplused and sold. And why I say that is that what I'm seeing by those pictures is pure neglect of this facility. It looks so dangerous from those pictures and the way that the walkway looked out of place, and my understanding some of the wood planking has fire damage and various things, and it should be shut down. In fact, I'm labeling that boat ramp as of today from Lightning a nuisance. And as the nuisance inspector, I'm going to walk out there and I'm going to write $100,000 worth of fines on you, like the city of Portland did on my marina, called Columbia River Marina when I owned it, because you're so corrupt at what you do and so hypocritical at what you do. My marina was in much better shape, and you people just wanted to remove me off my property off of Northeast Marine Drive, Columbia River Marina, which I owned and bought. And let me tell you something. What I see here is neglect. What I see here is people not being able to manage or run this properly. It is a hazard right now, and I'm asking it to be shut down, made into surplus property, and sold off because of your pure neglect and not understanding how to operate a boat ramp. You shouldn't be in the business of operating a boat ramp like you tried to bankrupt me when I was operating a whole full facility marina of 110 plus slips. And let me tell you something to any one of you up here. You can pull that up through BDS, pull that up under Columbia River Marina, and you'll understand I speak the truth. So when I'm talking about a marina, I want to see this actually have concrete or stainless steel like they've stated on the walkways. Again, as Mayor Wheeler stated, you go to the steel pilings because back in the day when they had the high floods, all those wood pilings all snapped off. So that's why I had all steel pilings in, because the insurance companies won't even insure your marina without steel this day and age, plain and simple. But what I'm saying here is that, from my position, get out of the boat ramp business. You don't know what you're talking about. You came into my property before, you wrote me up $100,000 worth of fines to run me out of town because I didn't like talking to those stupid-ass inspectors. I'm sorry, FCC. I'll take that back.
Thank you.
And my other point is, get out of the golf course business also. Sell those too. So I'm just saying, turn it into surplus, get it finished, and get out of the business. You don't belong in it.
Thank
And
you.
I think you said that to me many years ago with the sheriffs escorting your inspectors side by side with their little toy guns. You're all a bunch of hypocritical, pathetic jokes to think you can operate this boat ramp facility.
All right, thank you.
Besides the mayor.
Thank you very
Because
much.
Jesse
Well, I don't have
Waters
anything to do with
compliments the mayor, and I'm a Jesse Waters fan. Thank you.
All right. Who's Jesse Waters?
Jesse Waters.
Completely lost.
Yeah,
All right, let's
All right,
proceed. to
1092.
treat of a day.
Yeah, true.
I'm sorry, 1093, please call the roll.
Udaly,
Aye.
Fritz,
I'm very happy that we were able to keep the Swan Island boat ramp in city ownership with the transfer from Environmental Services to Parks in June of 2016. Portlanders do want river recreation, as was outlined by the Willamette River Recreation Plan, sponsored by the Office of Healthy Working Rivers and Parks and Planning. And so we are doing what the community of Portland has told us we want to. And as Commissioner Fish said back in 2016, this is a demonstration of our new property disposal policy working well. Thank you to the Oregon Marine Board and later the Oregon Department of Fish and Wildlife for these grants. Thank you, Brett Horner and Maya Agarwal, for your excellent presentation. And thanks, Don Athey and Don Jotlin, for overseeing the day-to-day maintenance of the Swan Island boat ramp. Aye.
Fish,
Well, Commissioner Fritz just gave my closing statement, so I'm just going to vote aye. Thank you.
Saltzman,
Aye.
Wheeler,
Aye. The ordinance is adopted. Please call the roll on 1094.
Udaly,
Aye.
Fritz,
Aye.
Fish,
Aye.
Saltzman,
Aye.
Wheeler.
Aye, the ordinance is adopted.
Thank you both
And
very much.
I know this will come as sad news to everybody, but we are adjourned.
I still want to know.